What makes world building so important in anime and manga? What sets these two apart as genres from other forms of storytelling is their unique use of visual elements. Compared to a novel that is purely text-based and relies completely on describing every bit of context that the author wants to convey using words, a manga embeds its dialogue and plot into a visual framework for the reader to see and feel, rather than read and interpret. In essence, it allows capturing the most significant moments of a story by combining two mediums at the same time, film and text. Every panel in the story is like a frozen frame, carefully chosen to catch the instant carrying the best meaning and emotion for the reader. And in the hands of the right person, this hybrid form can allow for a unique way of storytelling, combining the advantages of visual and textual elements alike. So while it gives us the effortless feeling of watching a scene unfold on screen, it still manages to retain the reader's need for interpretation and, in extension, also participation in the story. By only showing us a fraction of what is happening, a moment captured in time, and nothing but plain text for dialogues and description, manga leaves a lot more to the reader than a movie would, while still showing a much clearer picture of the world than any book could do. Anime then, of course, takes this a step further and brings that story into the medium of film completely. Being able to witness a story unfold by seeing the characters' actions and emotions with your own eyes can, without any doubt, be a great experience. However, as you probably are aware, emotions and thoughts can be depicted in a non-visual way just as well, and in some cases maybe in even more detail. The true power then of the visual nature of anime and manga lies somewhere else. What really affects its audience the most and what makes the genre so intriguing for people to follow is the vast and rich story world it creates. In other words, world building. I think everyone has made the experience of becoming obsessed with the world of a story they love. This obsession becomes strikingly clear when looking at franchises like Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings, where world building has been taken to an entirely new level. What makes these vast worlds with deep-reaching lore, countless regions, and even unique languages so fascinating to us is our deep desire to lose ourselves in the stories we love. We are looking for a way to keep the story going and explore even more of its facets and adventures. However, simply cramming as much detail and additional information into your storytelling won't make people fall in love with it, a lesson that many authors and writers have had to learn before. Great world building then is a lot more than simply overloading the audience with heaps of information and impressive visuals. In fact, introducing more and more elements of a world that don't directly influence the story at hand can lead to a rapid drop in tension in your storyline and ultimately result in the audience losing interest. So, what makes a good story world? And what sets this world that you enjoy so much losing yourself in apart from others? In a good story, the world is a representation of the inner and more personal struggles of the protagonist. It is a physical representation of the most essential elements of storytelling: conflict, emotion, symbolism, and development. All these things that drive the plot and get you involved into the characters and their actions have to be connected to the world this story takes place in some way or form. So it's important that each new element of the physical story world has a connection to the events at hand and enriches the context under which they take place. Once this arena resonates with the plot, the audience now can start to enrich and expand this world in their own minds without needing any specific instructions. Now we actually want to know more about this universe that has brought forth and shaped our heroes. This way, we assure that the plot and the characters involved feel like an organic part of the world they are in. Their struggles and the world's struggles now go hand in hand. So, how is such a story world created? How does it influence your perception of the story? And even more specifically, why does it make manga and anime so enjoyable to watch? We will now explore these questions using the example of One Piece, but once you finish this video, you will be able to apply these principles to any other great story you encounter. And no worries, plot-wise, this case study will be 100% spoiler-free. If you are unfamiliar with the story of One Piece, it follows the adventures of a young pirate, Monkey D. Luffy, and his crew to explore the world and become the king of the pirates. This may sound a little bit weird at first, but the overarching premise of the story is already deeply connected to the story world it occurs in. Because the world of One Piece is actually a world of pirates. The arena for our story is an entire planet that is mostly covered by ocean. With the exception of a single slim continent that spans around the globe like a wall and is inaccessible to all but a small ruling class, all inhabitable land exists in the form of islands spread across the world. This ruling class dominates the entire population of the world. The only exception to this are pirates, who roam the oceans freely and openly oppose the control and rules set by this world government. The evil rulers live on top of this single continuous landmass that separates the world, looking down on the rest of the people. A dangerous and wild ocean called the Grand Line splits the world in the other direction, forming 4 isolated regions. This world is constructed in a way that keeps people from moving around and interacting with others. As you can see, the story world already is a physical representation of the political structures as well as of the resulting injustice and suppression happening in this world. The only ones that do move around freely are those that oppose the regime. And since the world is completely made up of water and islands, these people are pirates, thus the premise of the plot being a pirate story. This is the system and environment that our hero lives in. Now, take a moment and think about this world. Just by looking at its physical structure and geography, can you tell what the overarching struggle of the story will be? It's actually pretty clear, right? Even if you know nothing about the story of One Piece, you guess that this will be a story about gaining freedom and changing the world. To fulfill this goal, our protagonist is sent on a journey through this arena. And while this world has many different facets, regions, and cultures, the overarching threat posed by this world government does not change, no matter where you go. So while it feels like we're changing places a lot, the overarching arena stays the same. However, this arena will have to change over time as well, as the hero changes in it. So while Luffy is on a journey to become the Pirate King, the freest person in the world, this goal actually also implies destroying the current system of oppression and changing the world itself. The hero's struggle is the world's struggle. By becoming free himself, he frees the world. This is what makes the story feel so organic. The characters we meet are a real part of this universe, and not just a group of people dropped onto a nice-looking stage. So now that we looked at the overall structure of a story world, let's get a little bit more into the specific details of world building. One of the most prominent elements of any story world is the natural setting that serves as the framework for the plot to take place. Typical examples from nature are the mountains, the forest, or the desert, while there are also man-made spaces like cities or villages. Each of these settings has a unique set of characteristics and implications for the story that go far beyond simple geography. To explain this a little bit more in depth, let's look at the 2 most prominent natural settings in the story of One Piece: the ocean and the island. The ocean makes up large parts of the planet One Piece takes place on. As a stage for our plot, it once again can be divided into 2 distinct zones: the surface and the depth. The surface is the ultimate 2-dimensional landscape. Like a huge chessboard, it is the playing field for the characters, with islands sprinkled across the map. It is here that the journey between the different destinations takes place, and where weather phenomena and other ships are pretty much the only other encounters for the crew. The ocean surface is a representation of the freedom that the hero is yearning for, and its infinite horizon opens up to an infinite number of possible destinations. On the other hand, the depth of the ocean are the ultimate 3-dimensional space. Compared to the freedom of the surface, the dark and endless waters beneath it are associated with danger and the unknown. It is in this weightless realm where ancient worlds lie hidden, terrible monsters lurk, and old secrets and treasures wait to be discovered. While the ocean may be by far the biggest setting in the story of One Piece, apart from a few exceptions, it is mostly the medium to travel from one adventure to the next. The real setting, where most of the plot and screen time takes place, however, are the islands that lie on its surface. Not only do these islands serve as a representation of the suppression by the world government, they are also perfectly suited for an episodic story like One Piece. Being completely isolated by the rest of the world, an island is the perfect premise to explore a distinct social context. Having a small and easily comprehensible culture and philosophy on every new island is the perfect chance to create individual story arcs with their own subplots. This makes every island into a unique setting where new things can be tested and individual development becomes very pronounced. One way this is often utilized in the context of anime and manga is in the context of training, where one's ability can grow and develop in an isolated place and where development can easily be compared. In the context of One Piece, this often takes place in the form of battle against a villain that dominates said island. And in that sense, every island is also a miniature of the world at large. All of this allows for a very complex and detail-rich experience, which in turn works perfectly with the visual capabilities of anime and manga. Typically, an island is integrated into the plot as follows. First, the characters from the world we're familiar with arrive in a new place with distinct rules and values. Then there is some sort of struggle or challenge that has to be overcome, usually a villain. And finally, this conflict then has to be solved, which involves personal growth by the protagonists. This premise allows the author to experiment with new concepts and ideas. In One Piece in particular, but also in other stories, these islands often also have different natural settings themselves. Some resemble deserts, others mountains, and again others jungles. Thus, a broad variety of settings can be utilized and explored while at the same time still following the overall theme of the island. Another very important part of physical world building is the weather. While at first glance this might sound not very exciting, weather has a profound and striking influence on the mood and emotion of a scene. Any good writer knows how to use the weather to make the inner life of a character visible to the audience. Depending on the context, most weather phenomena can have positive or negative connotations alike. Let's look at a few examples. Lightning and thunder can represent passion or terror. Rain can be a sign of coziness or sadness. Wind can be relief and tension alike. The sun can symbolize happiness, but it can also be a false exterior. And snow can make a scene feel very peaceful, but it can also signify death. Next time you watch an intense scene, make sure to pay attention to the weather and see how it's used to enhance and intensify the character's emotions. To round things off, let's now look at some other important elements of the story world that create a more fascinating and organic experience for the reader. These are elements that aren't 100% necessary for a story to be great, but if used correctly can make a huge difference. One of these elements that is being used in One Piece is the concept of the vehicle. Luffy and his crew travel on board of a ship that brings them from A to B. However, this ship also represents a sort of home for the protagonists. It is a moving house that gives the audience a sense of safety and comfort. Once the house is left, a new adventure begins in the dangerous world outside. This helps us form a sense of continuity by serving as an anchor point despite the ever-changing landscape. Another great element to shift the perspective of the viewer is to play around with size. One Piece is a story that particularly likes to play with the concept of size in terms of landscape, creatures, or architecture. Enormous constructions and beings have a profound impact on the reader's experience, no matter if it's the gigantic gates of justice, enormous sea monsters, or the size of some of the characters involved. Having them put in contrast with our perception of normal lets us witness the world we thought we knew from an entirely new perspective and allow for an exciting shift in perception. Then of course there is technology and culture as a whole. Having a unique set of machines and weapons, as well as distinct religious or cultural concepts integrated into the world in a way that feels natural, broadens our view of this world immensely. Especially in anime and manga, but also in other fantasy series, this often includes magical powers or other forms of power systems that are woven into this world. In the context of One Piece, these are the concepts of haki or willpower and the so-called devil fruits that bestow unique powers upon those that consume them. These systems have to follow distinct rules that explain why the world is the way it is and why the characters ended up with the level of knowledge, power, and technology that they have. Last but not least, I want to mention the use of gateways to other worlds that can be used to create a harsh cut in between scenes and locations and throw the hero into unknown territory. In One Piece, this concept is used quite often, like entering the dangerous Grand Line through Reverse Mountain, visiting the Fishman Island located at the bottom of the ocean by diving into the depth of the sea, or entering the underwater prison Impel Down that resembles Dante's Inferno. All of these elements are important pieces that help establish a story world that feels organic and structurally consistent. When you look at other stories that you enjoy, you will see these principles reoccurring as long as the author knows what he's doing. And of course, there are many more elements and settings to be explored that have different rules and implications. And yes, rules are also meant to be broken. However, whatever variation is put on a concept, it must still make sense in the context of the story that's being told. Specifically in anime and manga, world building is one of the most important pieces. With its often romantic and solemn vibe, bringing a unique story world to life is, in a way, the secret ingredient to this genre. This is what makes world building so important. If you enjoy this kind of video and want to become part of the channel, consider hitting the subscribe button and leaving a thumbs up on this video. Also, I want to say thank you to all of you who have followed and supported my work this past year. You have made my first year on YouTube extremely special. I wish you all happy holidays and a great start into the year 2020. Let's make it a good one.